So today we're going to be talking about BRICS. So,
Some basics. There are four countries when looking at the world, especially for foreign policy. These are central movers and shakers to know about and to focus on. Ukraine, Taiwan, Cold War, Rio Olympics, India Pakistan rivalry, partition, economic powers, military powers.
leading developing nations and countries, and many other titles and descriptions are essential. But since 2010, it has been BRICS. South Africa was added in 2010, as shown in the little graphic I showed with the yellow S that signifies South Africa. So, economist Jim O'Neill coined BRICS to group the four countries Brazil, Russia, India, and China together.
Brazil, India, Russia, China, in the new edition, South Africa.
Originally, it was a solely economic acronym until the first summit of leaders of BRIC in 2009. The goal originally was to form an equitable and multipolar world order, but with the addition of South Africa, it is clearly a geopolitical alliance. It is not just about forming a new world order, it's about structuring themselves and giving themselves a new structure within to grow. And as an alliance, it falls somewhere in between the EU and NATO to compare for Western viewers. There isn't really a military obligation inherent in it, but countries are supporting each other. For instance, during the Ukraine conflict, the war. Let's be strict about that. It is a war. China has supported, India has continued to buy from Russia, and Brazil, I am not sure. There hasn't been a ton of reporting on what Brazil's doing right now. So, but it has a EU kind of feel, but with no Eurozone and mainly treaty based. So, the five countries each are players economically, especially regionally.
Russia is essentially its own region, and as a natural gas and oil provider, it is seen and shown in the blockading to Europe. It really shows even they're still players in Europe despite the fall of the Iron Curtain. China is the new world power, that is the dominant force in manufacturing in Asia, but its economic and military power may soon become clear as a hollow horse. India is an extremely powerful developing nation which, despite British attempts during partition to limit its size and power, is still a country of great standing and potential power that is actively sought as an ally by the US, Australia, China, Russia, a number of countries. The last OG, Brazil, it has even been rising in economic power that was sidetracked in recent years.
Each of the BRICS is an important country on the world stage. Two countries are permanent UN Security Council members, and another, India, is seeking to take on a permanent seating role. Given the importance of renewable energy, some of the BRICS are unlikely to continue to advance without substantial change, but one of these oil energy, old is probably the better term than oil, because some of them do use coal like China. Old energy dependent countries like Russia will likely be able to transition after being forced off global markets by Western nations due to its surge in Ukraine after many years of open war between Russian proxies and the Ukrainian government.
Russia is a old power that likely will transition as their source of revenue dries up and they have to find new options to sustain the economic and political regime of Vladimir Putin and whoever his successor may end up being.
China is starting to adapt to the revolution energy, but it is an outlier. Its size and established economic role will only be limited by political decisions or a zero COVID policy internally and externally. China is an economic giant of the group, while Russia is the military giant of the group, despite what is shown in Ukraine. For instance, of the group, Russia will be the only one to have fought a major country. The US hasn't fought a major country in a long while. The US has fought against less conventional forces mainly, at least since Vietnam. Most of the conflicts have been unconventional, not conventional. Um, and India and Brazil each could change places with either Russia or China. They both have the capacity to do it, but more likely taking the place of Russia than the place of China in terms of just the scope and size. Maybe India could take China's place in terms of economics. These BRIC members are all in a constant competition with themselves and the current economic order. So, the US, Europe, big names like that. They trade and act on surpluses in order to increase their control of markets. Each has a resources, whether it's people, rainforest, land, and oil. Each are capable of propelling themselves further up the economic order or reshaping it altogether. Essentially, keep an eye on BRICS nations. When they speak or act, they are impactful. They could end up expanding to include countries like South Korea, one of the most developed and expanding countries in terms of economics currently, and a substantial military power on par with a Great Britain with the backing of the US currently. But for now, the current 5 BRICS members are important to keep an eye on. Remember, as Nassim Taleb said, history doesn't crawl, it leaps. And there's a good chance members of BRICS are going to take a leap